Good morning. Actor Victor Buono, whose home is in Encino, several days last week in El Cajon as a house guest of his brother and wife, Mr. and Mrs. Louis Erica, and watched his nephew, Wayne, play ball with the Yankees in the Western Little League. Mr. Buono's, whose latest film is The Strangler, and played on The Perry Mason Show. He also spent time with his grandmother, Mrs. Myrtle Keller. On September 16, 1963, on Sunday, Victor Charles was hospitalized in Hollywood and was suffering from bronchial pneumonia. He was assessed to be in fair condition after all of the excitement from being a nominee at the 35th Academy Awards and working with Frank Sinatra and Dean Martin. He must have physically collapsed from all the excitement in that short time period. 3 days later, on September 19, 1963, Victor Charles and his agent, Jerry Rosen, were going into business with one another. Apparently, they had organized a film company, and they were going to launch their first motion picture comedy titled Barnaby Appleby and the Princess. He, of course, was cast in the lead role of the film. Their business adventure and motion picture sadly never happened for Victor Charles. I've looked carefully for the reasons why they didn't produce the film, and I couldn't find any evidence about their promising film company. But I do believe it was directly pointed at the debacle motion picture, The Strangler, that helped to bring it down to a final end. On October 1st, 1963, Victor Charles was being criticized in newspapers throughout America about his disappointing film, The Strangler. Many journalists wrote about the nudity and the murdering of young women in the film. He commented, "I don't think we have to add anything else in the way of shock. The audience will be shocked enough without dwelling on the attire at the time I kill." The reviewers usually also pointed out his weight condition, and he always gave his witty defense in saying, "But I won't change my silhouette. The only style of clothing that fits my physique is a toga. It conceals, it lies. My tailor is coming up from San Diego to survey me for 3 suits. My dinner jacket was getting frayed, so I called him up and told him to cut up a few tenths and make me a new one." When critics questioned him how his career was going, he often said something like this: "I've done about 40 television shows. They have prepared me for the longer, more arduous motion picture roles. I've worked with some fine actors and learned some nasty little scene-grabbing tricks from them. I feel this is a business where individuality is paramount." As we can clearly see, many reviewers can be very nasty to Victor Charles and about his weight, and it would sadly follow him with this type of abuse throughout his career. On November 21st, 1963, there was another dream that never came true, being the project of director Robert Aldrich and Victor Charles assembling a television program series titled Mr. Man. In this production, Victor Charles would be playing the lead role as Mr. Man. This business venture was another stunning clue that something horribly had happened to Victor Charles's acting career. In 1963, it was a very kind year to Victor Charles in forging him into being a credible motion picture actor. Director Robert Aldrich takes most of the credit by casting Bette Davis and Joan Crawford in Whatever Happened to Baby Jane. If Aldrich had cast lesser actresses lacking star power, Victor Charles most likely wouldn't have received an Academy Award nominee for Best Supporting Actor. Robert Aldrich didn't just stop there in 1963 with Whatever Happened to Baby Jane, but he moved quickly into directing for Texas. And once again, he cast two of the most popular motion pictures actors in the movie business, Frank Sinatra and Dean Martin. Victor Charles once again was sandwiched between two legendary actors who would help to print his name into Hollywood history. Victor Charles, unfortunately, didn't get rave reviews from his performance in For Texas, and neither did the motion picture too. It was a fair film production, but not a blockbuster like Whatever Happened to Baby Jane. This may have been part of the reasons why Barnaby Appleby and the Princess and Mr. Man never happened, because their investors were probably running away for fear of losing all of their money. The gears that move Hollywood is all about money. In looking back at 1963, it was Victor Charles's greatest accomplishment, and he never matched it ever again. Victor Charles performed in the motion picture The Strangler, and he was the lead actor playing in the role of Leo Kroll. It was released on April 8, 1964, and the producer was Samuel Bischoff. It is my opinion that after Victor Charles was in Whatever Happened to Baby Jane, and he was then jumping into The Strangler, it was an enormous embarrassment to many, and especially after receiving an Academy Award nomination. He was standing on a mountain peak with Whatever Happened to Baby Jane. But when The Strangler came into theaters throughout America, he had jumped into a deep and dark abyss. On April 20th, 1964, in the Star Tribune newspaper, written by Will Jones, it printed, "Buono is big, fat menace. Victor Buono, the fat mama's boy of Whatever Happened to Baby Jane, now has himself the role of a fat mama's boy in The Strangler. Only this time it is his show, with no big-name stars like Bette Davis and Joan Crawford to grab all the attention. Buono is the strangler of the title. The town is suddenly full of films about sex nuts, and Buono is the softest, fattest, and goofiest of the lot. The Strangler does not pretend to be a funny picture, yet to take it seriously is to destroy its essential charm. It was obviously designed to let this newest Hollywood discovery, a mountainous blob of method cholesterol, perform an exercise in quivering, sweaty, mincing fatness. The Strangler's big hang-up is that he gets all the jollies from strangling pretty girls with their own stockings. He always takes a toy doll along. Unlike less sophisticated movie monsters of the past, however, he's not inclined to leave the toy doll at the scene. Instead, he takes it home with him and undresses it and throws it into a drawer, which is full of undressed dolls. Needless to say, The Strangler wasn't going to be nominated by the Academy Award for Best Picture of the Year. I wish I knew who got the stupid idea that this motion picture vehicle would carry my Uncle Victor Charles on to more success. Did Victor Charles argue with his agent, Jerry Rosen, to be in that despicable film only so he could have the leading role? Or did Jerry Rosen talk him into doing the film, The Strangler? We'll never know why or who made the tragic decision for Victor Charles to play the leading role of a murderer of young women in The Strangler. The momentum he had after Whatever Happened to Baby Jane and Four for Texas suddenly came to a sluggish halt. I don't believe Victor Charles ever played a murderer while acting at the Old Globe Theater in San Diego, California. He and his agent Jerry Rosen should have known better not to put him in such a vulnerable position of being a murderer monster. He was well known at the Old Globe Theater for his fine comedic and classical performances, but unfortunately, the Strangler typecast Victor Charles for the rest of his career. He spent the rest of his life trying to erase the image he made in that inferior motion picture. The horrific damage made to Victor Charles's character didn't end there, and he was in the Akron Beacon Journal newspaper in Akron, Ohio on April 23, 1964, written by Dick Shippey, and it printed, "Caught but not in time. Should the Boston Strangler, when he's nailed, turn out to be tall, slender, and handsome, it could put a crimp in what might be a busy career for Victor Buono." Being fat, funny-looking, as described in The Strangler, and sinister in manner, Victor now seems to be getting the sort of roles once given to Lord Krieger. You know, things like Jack the Ripper Returns, the son of Jack the Ripper. It's not that Buono is such a satisfying menace in terms of acting. Oh no, he only looks the part. If Victor had contributed more than looking the part, The Strangler might have been something better than the low-grade chiller it is. Not a great deal better, because The Strangler is pretty silly stuff in terms of plot and character motivation. But at least The Strangler wouldn't have all of the menacing force of a spooky cigar store Indian.